Hello everyone, and welcome to this new series looking at the Sabbath as a theme for our times. You can use it as a study series, individually or as a study group, and there are some questions at the end of each video to help you do that. Or you can just watch the films. We'll be releasing the films sequentially over the next few weeks. And this series is inspired by a great little book by the theologian Walter Brueggemann called The Sabbath as Resistance. Here is my well-thumbed copy, and it's available from all good booksellers and is highly recommended by me. But although that's the inspiration, the content of the series is very much my own take on it all, and I'm offering it because it seems to me that it is remarkably relevant to our times. In the early months of 2020, something truly remarkable happened. The world stopped. To stop the spread of the COVID-19 pandemic, almost the entire population of the world went into lockdown. And in the midst of all the anxiety, suffering, and grief, we found a beautiful pearl. People discovered the gift of rest. Suddenly, our busy worlds ground to a halt. Our daily routine was no longer a desperate rush to cram in work, ferrying the kids to ballet, karate and Zumba classes, fitting in daily exercise, keeping up with family, doing the shopping, and everything else that we try to cram into every day. We discovered a new way of being, and we rather liked it. What we discovered in that moment was, I believe, the Jewish and Christian principle of Sabbath. We liked it so much that we all breathed a deep sigh of relief and vowed never to go back to the way life was before. But then, the months dragged on and we remembered what we were missing, and now as I record this towards the end of the year in the midst of lockdown 2, we're all just desperate for life to return to normal. But wait a minute. Let's just press pause on the rush back to the old way of life and ask ourselves if we need to swing so wildly from mad activity to wearing useless inertia. Isn't there a way of living that provides a balance between work and rest? I believe there is. It's called the Sabbath. Perhaps the most important, most overlooked and misunderstood principle, certainly within the Christian tradition. To help us rethink this, let me begin with a question. Why is it that out of the 10 commandments, the command to rest is the one we find the most difficult? We find it much easier to handle the thou shalt not commands, don't steal, don't covet, don't murder, don't slander your neighbour, but we try remarkably hard to wriggle out of the command to rest. Firstly, we relegate it to the lowest priority, not so much a command as a suggestion. A nice idea, perhaps, but hopelessly impractical, and not that important anyway. And then we surround it with contention and objections. We have disputes about whether it should be a Saturday or a Sunday, or perhaps a day of our own choosing. Or we get into arguments about what we can and can't do on the Sabbath, and point out that the practice of Sabbath was actually quite oppressive, full of things you couldn't do, and also that made us quite judgmental of our neighbours. We don't want to go back to that. We argue that it's impractical since the Sunday trading laws of the 1990s now mean that Sunday is just a day like any other. If the government isn't imposing it on us, then Sabbath is no longer possible or relevant. Well, I'm here to say that it is. Sabbath isn't about rules, whether of our own or of the government. Sabbath is an act of resistance, a rebel cause, an assertion of freedom against the demands the world tries to put on us. It's about taking back control of our own lives and choosing to be a blessing to the world around us. But to get there, we clearly need to do a major rethink. We need to go back to first principles and to keep rethinking it until it provides the kind of liberation we enjoyed back at the beginning of lockdown, but without it preventing us from living. So in this series, I'll take us back to the principles behind the Sabbath and look at various ways we can practice it in everyday life in a way that can bring radical transformation and liberty to us and to our neighbour. So as we make a start, I'm going to suggest 3 important principles to keep in mind right through the journey. Firstly, we need to remember that it is a command. In fact, as we shall see, it is actually the linchpin of the 10 commandments. Only if we practice the liberation and resistance of the Sabbath do the rest of the commandments stop being oppressive and become an act of liberation and defiance themselves. But that requires us to understand God's rules as very different from the rules of this world, because God is a very different kind of ruler. Second principle is that we need to resist the temptation to take a generous command to rest and hedge it around with new rules of our own and turn it from a gift into a trial. Some of you will be old enough to remember the Sabbath being so strict that it was just another form of oppression. You couldn't do anything fun or useful on a Sunday. We don't want to go back to that. So the third point is to remember that this isn't about going back to the way things used to be. Humanity has actually never got this command right. So we can't learn this habit from our past. It's about imagining a future that is yet to be and discovering a better way of living.